Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guests today are Cecile Goding and John Lake. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice to be here.
Cecile and John have written a brand new opera that is premiering in the Iowa City area at the Coralville Center for the Performing Arts on July 30th and 31st, called The Machine Stops. So welcome again, and let's just dive right in. Cecile, you were the one who kind of came up with this idea, so tell me how it came about that you're a poet and a writer. We're in the Writers' Workshop at the University of Iowa, and that was where this idea came from.
Yeah, so I've been a poet and also a nonfiction writer. I was also in the UI's nonfiction program, and got involved with writing for music when I took a wonderful seminar that was led by our dear poet laureate Marvin Bell and his friend David Gomper, who's the director of new music at the UI. And they just taught a wonderful seminar where they basically just put together 11 poets and 11 new composers, and we just created songs and different pieces every week. And then we had a big performance of them.
And that led you decide to go out and create your own project of a larger scope.
Yeah, once I heard my poetic lines put to music, it was magic. And it was not anything like the music that I was hearing when I wrote. I've always loved collaboration. I'm from a small community in the South, so that was what I was interested in, working in the community. And so then I started writing and got very involved in it, doing something that's lively and fun. And then after the first draft, I found a composer.
And the story, it's an adaptation of a short story by E.M. Forster.
Yes, I was looking for, when I started looking for the libretto, I wanted something that was socially relevant. And I love science fiction, I love teaching science fiction, and the idea that E.M. Forster came up with in 1909 was that in the future, everyone would live alone in their own rooms, have hundreds of friends, which they would never see, and that they would communicate through their handheld devices.
Wow.
So
boy, 10 for 10 for E.M. Forster on that one.
I know. In 1909, when most people didn't even have telephones. So I could see the parallels, even in the 70s when I first read the story, I could see the parallels and how technology could be both very convenient and connect us, but also have the potential to control us and influence what we think of as reality. So I was just immediately interested in it because most science fiction is commenting on the present issues instead of something in the future. It's very socially relevant, as I said. And another reason for choosing science fiction is that we were trying to attract an audience of people who don't normally consider themselves to be opera goers. We do have quite a large group of opera fans in the Iowa City, Coralville area, but we wanted to expand that and introduce people who might not love opera as much as we do, and give them a little taste of what it would be like in English, of course, and something that is sci-fi.
Well, you're right. Many sci-fi fans don't think of themselves as opera fans, unless, of course, the opera is in Klingon.
Let's try that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, Klingon with English super titles. That would be a hoot.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got the idea. You found this incredible prescient story that you remembered. You've written the libretto and have a first draft. Now you need a composer. So how did you and John hook up?
Well, we know a lot of people, the same people, and I just started asking around. Do you have any friends who might have time and expertise to do this? And that's when I found John Lake.
And John, your career is mainly in rock and pop music. Yes.
Yes. I started out as a rock guitar player after the Beatles
like
and the British invasion, and I was always interested in other forms of music, and not specifically opera when I was young, but everything from Zappa to Stravinsky to, a band called Bonzo Dog Band, which was essentially the musical equivalent of Monty Python. So that sense of whimsy and sense of humor and social commentary that, it was the 60s. There was a wild mix of things, including avant-garde composers that made strange sounds, but also there were rock groups using orchestration in their records, which I really related to. I thought, that's very interesting sound. And eventually in the 90s, I took some music courses because I wanted to see how this classical music ticked. The other stuff, I knew what it was made of, but fortunately, and I had no idea what I was going to do with all that stuff, because I wasn't going to be a teacher. I didn't really have the outlet or chops to be a composer, but I did have some basic ability that, fortunately, Cecile asked me to do it, and I was just foolhardy enough to say, oh, yeah, I'll do that.
So you said yes, and then you probably had an oh my God moment. What have I gotten myself into?
Yes. Well, first it was just the two of us writing, and that was easy. But then when I got into putting the music into software and doing that whole thing, and then of course we had an early premiere that was that was kind of funny, because that was the intimidating part, because that's all technical and I'm not used to using music software, and my notation was good, but not at the level of a trained composer. I had, but it was a good learning experience, and I had the jump to the quick. On our premiere of the opera, it was just a guitar and 7 singers. It was like a reduced, as you could tell, a reduced version. But the singer said, you can't conduct this from the guitar. We need a conductor. So they brought in a man named Ed Kotick, who's a legend in the area, and much to my surprise, he said, well, I like these ideas here. I would like to continue to encourage this project. So that was a big deal, because we had someone who knew what they were doing saying, I want to hear more of this. So it was so that was very encouraging.
So you're a guitarist,
yes,
and in your own songwriting, and writing for singers and guitar. So now you're arranging for what's a 12-piece
12-piece orchestra. Winds, brass, some strings, and guitar and piano and drums.
How or if did the music change from when you jotted the notation down originally to then having to do the orchestration? Did you discover that this melody doesn't work now that I've got these other instruments to worry about, or was that the case?
No, it was that part of it was pretty smooth in terms of conceptually. I mean, executionally, making sure I had all the notes and the markings and all that right was a challenge. But that's where Ed Kotick came in, because he was an experienced conductor, and he knew what the instruments could do, and he could tell me, okay, this instrument shouldn't do this here, or a lot of tips like you should really double these things here, and a lot of technical tips that were very useful to me. But he was very he would give me a lot of praise for what I was doing, so that was encouraging too. He didn't just critique what I was doing. He said, I like this. I like what you're doing here. And so I felt like I could conceive of the instrumentation fairly easily at a certain point. So, and I always feel that if the music is valid in one form, like if it's just a guitar and a voice, that's the important thing. Or like, say, if it was a piano and a voice, that way the orchestration expands on it rather than takes over. And that I found that conceptually to be a very easy process. And that was really the fun of it. Of course, the most fun was when we were just writing it, and I'd play it for her and sing it. And we'd sing it, and she'd always be surprised. I didn't expect it to sound like that. And it was usually a pleasant surprise. I think you probably had maybe one critique out of 100 things that we did, but so that was a good way to start it as the two of us working together, and then eventually adding, like I said, the workshop, but then we had to continue working on it after then.
What would you call the style of the music in the opera? Is it, classic opera? Is it more light opera? Is there, with your background in rock and roll and country, are there, does those rhythms and flavors happen in there? What does the music sound like?
It's eclectic. So that's, I realize that could be a vague term, but it does cover it because my influences are everybody from Frank Zappa to Stravinsky to Mozart to Puccini to Wagner. I mean, Wagner is how I got into music. I don't think this resembles what Wagner, although there are certain parts of it that I would call Wagnerian. But so it's a mix, but I try to make it coherent. I mean, you can draw from a lot of sources if your musical line and your ideas are coherent. So I would think of an instrumental line, think, what would Mozart do here? But then a lot of other times it would be, what would Frank Zappa do with this? Or, what would, sometimes a song would come out like, well, this is kind of Neil Youngish. Now, you don't want to necessarily hear that in the opera saying, well, that what sounds like Neil Young. Nobody's going to think that.
When you think opera, you usually don't think Neil Young.
Yeah.
So, Cecile, as this is coming together, you said at the top that the first time you heard your poetry set to music, it was totally different than what you expected.
Mm-hmm.
So what was in the writing process, and you started hearing what John was doing with your words, what was your reaction?
Well, part of it was technical because I needed to know the types of sounds that the opera singers would want and their range, and so certain vowels or certain consonants are easier. And so he also did a lot of text changes, too, that we would talk about. And I think once we really both understood the characters, then the music sort of came from them, that the type of song or the type of melody would actually be something that we thought of as what that character would be trying to evoke.
And one of the most important revelations to me was, in writing it, I found it to be far easier than I thought it would be, because I was influenced eventually by the fact that writers would say, well, the characters just wrote themselves. And I would think, I don't know how that works. And then when I was doing this, I thought, now I see how it works. It's an intuitive process where I have a piece of text and I think, what do they want to say? What do they want to sound like? And it was easier to do than I thought, which, I mean, the larger organizational thing is still hard, but that immediate idea, which is part of the fun of course, writing, is that immediate idea that's exciting when you get it, and you try and maintain that. So that was kind of fun for me because I felt like, I might actually have an artist perspective here, I might actually know what I'm doing, possibly. We'll see.
So you had kind of a soft premiere with just, what was it you said, just guitar and 7 voices?
Yeah.
And, and that moved, then you moved into the full orchestration. But aside from, changing the arrangements and all of that, after you saw and heard it on stage for the very first time, was there anything that needed to be changed or adjusted?
Yeah, we did do a workshop, again, just a workshop for a group of people. This was at Grand Living in Coralville. And we passed out comment cards, and we asked people to help us with it and to give us their feedback. And so then that was at the very beginning of March, and then we made quite a few changes. Then, there weren't a lot of changes on my end, but I think there were more. It's a lot more work for John.
And that was one of those things where you hear about, writers having to get rid of stuff that they like. There was a lot of that.
Yes.
That was like, well,
kill your darlings.
Yeah, but that can be a fun process. It's like, okay, this is great. I can decide to take 2 pages out and it'll work. That's part of the process. That's got to be something you're willing to do. And, if we have a revised version, we'll probably take more stuff out. But, it's that's part of the fun of putting it together. Is it's like, it's malleable. You're in the process of deciding what goes where, and that for a musician, that's very exciting.
How big is the onstage cast?
We have 7 singers, and so it's what Ed Kotick would call a chamber opera. And we're glad it's that way with 12 musicians because we want to be able to put it out there and see if small opera companies that don't have a big audience or other universities would like to pick it up. And so we're glad it's that size.
The opera, brand new, premiering in Iowa City. The Machine Stops, July 30th and 31st at the Coralville Center for the Performing Arts. And you have a website where people can go for more
Yes.
information, which, Cecile, is?
It's the machinestopsopera.com.
And there's a ticket link there, but you can also go, I imagine, to the Coralville Center for the
Yes.
Performing Arts website and get tickets there.
Oh, yeah.
Well, good luck. It's always so exciting, I know, from a writing perspective, to see your words performed and sung out there in front of the whole world.
Yes.
And again, July 30th and 31st at the Coralville Center for the Performing Arts. Hope it goes well, and keep us apprised of future projects.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cecile and John. Again, it's the machinestopsopera.com for more information. You can hear the Culture Crawl live on the radio many weekdays at 10:20, or download the podcast, watch or listen on your own schedule at kcck.org/culture, or however you get your podcasts. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.